In the second video, we're going to talk about diffusion, osmosis, and photosynthesis. Probably the harder parts. Most of you guys did really well with cells, but these concepts are a little bit more difficult, so you may need to spend some more time on them. So the first idea is diffusion and osmosis, and we tried to talk to you about it, and in terms that middle schoolers might enjoy talking about. So we talked a little bit about flatulence. We talked about how, when somebody passes gas, it's kind of interesting to think about how does that make it from one end of the room to the other? Or when you're in the bathroom and you spray something, how does that cloud, that smelly cloud of aerosol, make its way all across the bathroom? And the cool thing about the aerosol is you can actually sort of see what happens. You can see it go up into the air and start to disperse. And that is something called diffusion. When you've got a cloud of concentrated gas or particles, like a liquid in this case, in the case of cells, what happens is those particles that are concentrated start to spread out to areas that are less concentrated. So you've got all the aerosol particles over here, but no aerosol particles out there. So they spread out. Sort of like a smelly locker room, nobody's huddles really close to each other. Everybody kind of stays away from each other. But at the same time, if it's winter and it's really cold and everybody was freezing, you'd all huddle together. Um, the smelly locker room is a great example of diffusion. Um, anyway, so when we see these pictures right here, we can see what happens. This is a hypotonic solution. Hypo, you should know, means below, like hypothermia, below temperature, right? When your body falls to a low temperature. So this is a hypotonic solution. This is a solution, and this is the cell. So the solution is hypotonic. It doesn't have very many particles in it. And so if we said that those particles were water, right? In a hypotonic solution, if there's less water out here and more water in here, all of a sudden these particles of water would be leaving. They'd be going to where there's less concentration or where it's less crowded. In an isotonic solution, you've got the same on the outside as you have on the inside, so nothing's going to happen. The arrows would go both ways. Here, the arrows would go. In the hypotonic solution, the arrows would go out. In the hypertonic solution, if we say that these particles are water, we've got hyper, right, above or more than, and hypertonic solution, you got more water particles here than here and here. So the particles would move into the cell where it's less crowded. Now we used an egg to show this, and we saw that when you place the egg in corn syrup, right, the corn syrup had very few particles, water particles, on the outside. And so what happened is the water from the egg moved out. In the hypertonic solution of water, we had lots of water particles here, less water in the egg, and so the egg filled up because the water moved to the inside. Now, the difference there, even though that is a case of diffusion, when we're talking about water particles moving through a membrane, right? Cells have membranes. When we're talking about water particles moving through a semi-permeable membrane, even though that is diffusion, specifically, we call that type of diffusion osmosis, when water goes through a semi-permeable membrane. And by semi-permeable, semi just means sort of, kind of, right? And permeable means you can go through it and you permit something. Just like you guys are going to get your permit, right? Which allows you to drive. And just like, if you said semi-sweet chocolate chips, it means it's sweet, but it's sort of not. Or it's semi-professional. You're professional, sort of, but you're not all the way there. Semi-finals. It's not really the finals, but it's almost. So semi-permeable just means it sort of allows. It allows some things through, but not other things. And in this case, the cell is going to let water pass through it. In some cases, it goes in. Some cases, it goes out. So that is diffusion and osmosis. The one other thing about this word isotonic, one way that you can remember that, we talk about hypo and hyper. Iso, if you're good at math, you might know isosceles, right? Isosceles, and that just means it has two equal sides, right? Two equal sides. So that takes care of osmosis and diffusion. Let's talk a little bit about photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis, the numbers and the letters look really confusing, but they're really not at all. Because you guys have learned this since like third grade, and you know this. CO2, you know that's carbon dioxide, right? You talk about that a lot. You know about the issues of global warming and discussions about the environment. H2O, you all should know by now that that's water. And then O2, O is just the oxygen. The only one that might be a little confusing to you is this part in yellow, the C6H12O6. And you need to learn that, and that just means it's sugar, right? That's all it is, sugar, glucose. And now when we talk about these, you know that plants need carbon dioxide and water to grow. You know that they need that. You know that they need the sun's energy. And also, you know that they make sugars, right? You guys eat fruits, they're sweet. You know that they make sugars. And you know that they make oxygen because we need to breathe in oxygen. You know that that comes from plants. So really, we're just taking what we know and putting it into letters, which you're going to do a lot next year in 8th grade. So we just say carbon dioxide. Hey, let's shorten that. What is this carbon dioxide made out of? C and two O's. All right, and these numbers here, we're not going to talk too much about balancing equations, but for now, just memorize those. And if you want to, I can show you why we get those particular numbers. But it's pretty easy because it's just 6, 6. You've got your 6 there, and then 6. So that should be pretty simple. Now, for respiration, it's sort of the opposite. This is what happens in our cells. Right? Our cells take sugar. When we eat food, we get those nutrients. We get sugars and oxygen. Right? That's what we breathe in. And our cells take those two products, and it makes energy. And when it does that, we also are going to produce waste. We have stuff that we need to get rid of. So what do? We produce carbon dioxide, which is going to end up going to the plants. We produce water, and we breathe, especially when it's cold out. If you breathe onto the glass, you can see the mist kind of come up on the glass. You can like write your name in it and stuff. That's because when you breathe out, you're actually breathing out water, water vapor. And so the plants use water. So what we give out, plants take in, and what plants give out, we take in. And so it's a very big cycle for respiration and photosynthesis, and that's important to understand. Here's a little bit better graphic maybe for you. You can see that our cells, when we go through respiration, produce carbon dioxide and water. That, along with sunlight, causes photosynthesis in plants. And what do the plants give out? Plants give out oxygen and sugar, or glucose. And then we take that in and start the cycle all over. And we release some heat as well, right? Because we're warm-blooded in particular. All right, so that is basically photosynthesis, osmosis, and diffusion. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you guys.